Here.
King.
Here.
Dahlhaug.
Here. Please stand for the invocation of the pledge. As we continue down this road of uncharted territory in which there are no clear answers, please help guide us to make the best decisions for our employees, our residents, and our community as a whole. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The 6/2/2020 board meeting minutes have been distributed, and if there are no amendments, they stand approved. Report of the Finance and Rules Committee for Rule 6, Cassandra.
The Finance and Rules Committee has met and they recommend to waive rules to act upon late resolutions.
Motion, Andrea, second by Dick. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here that would like privilege of the floor? Yes, sir. Would you come forward and state your name for the record, please?
Right here, sir.
Yep, or right there by the swinging doors is fine.
My name is the Reverend David Mahaly. May I begin?
You may begin.
All right. I would like to begin by sharing a short bio, which will also put into context my comments later on. I was the rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Waterloo, New York, Seneca County for 32 years. For 28 of those 32 years, I worked very closely with law enforcement, state police, uniformed and BCI, 5 county sheriffs, their undersheriffs and staff, the chief of police and his staff of Seneca Falls, the chief of police and his staff of Waterloo. I also worked very closely and consider a personal friend, the Honorable retired 3-term county court judge, Judge Dennis Bender. I first worked with Judge Bender when he was district attorney of Seneca County. 4 years ago, I was invited back for his retirement dinner. At the end of his dinner, I was approached by a BCI investigator, now retired, and he handed me this and said, on behalf of law enforcement of Seneca County, we would like to show and give you this. It is an honorary New York State Police Shield. I also am a member of the Policemen's Benevolent Association, New York State Police. My comments are as follows. The sheriff of this county refuses to wear a mask, both professionally and privately. He claims it is unconstitutional. Obviously, he is ignorant of the fact that the New York State Assembly, the New York State Senate, and the courts have upheld an executive order by the governor during this pandemic to be construed as law. To me, he has taken an oath of office and he has intentionally and deliberately violated that oath of office. Perhaps the most glaring indication of professional misconduct and arrogant dereliction of duty surrounding the New Bremen event when the sheriff said that it was public health's job to disperse unruly gatherings. That is absolutely false. The only authority given to disperse unruly gatherings are law enforcement and its members. He then went on to say in the internet that it didn't matter anyways because he wouldn't disperse the crowd. My question to you, gentlemen and ladies, is do I have the right as a private citizen to pick and choose whatever laws I choose to obey? Or can I pick and choose whatever laws I choose to disobey? Or is it exclusively the prerogative of elected officials or appointed officials to choose to follow whatever law they choose and ignore whatever law they choose not to enforce or obey? After a number of conversations, it has been shared with me that behind the scenes, the sheriff has been encouraging you, the board, to create illegal legislation to create a sanctuary county because he is opposed to the SAFE Act, something which also has been upheld in the courts. I can only say to you, as a board, that if any of you are foolish enough to create this kind of illegal legislation, there will be serious consequences. I also will share with you and remind you that the Sheriff of St. Lawrence County and the Sheriff of Jefferson County, when presented with these options, publicly stated they could not and would not support this kind of legislation because it's unlawful, and they will follow their oath of office and enforce the laws of New York State. A few weeks ago, you as a board were presented with evidence of financial mismanagement in the Sheriff's Department. I will not go into his comments, but simply share with you my feeling about how you as a board responded. I have thought of a number of ways to describe your action, but because I'm wearing a collar and speaking in public, I will simply say that all of you became chickens. And in the course of that response, you failed in your fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Lewis County. I have already been in touch with the Attorney General's office and had a lengthy conversation with a staff member from that office, and he has directed me to pursue 2 other courses of action concerning this kind of conduct by the sheriff. I have already pursued one course, and I will certainly pursue the other course. In conclusion, I will remind this board that you have a very powerful tool at your disposal. It is called the power of the purse. And at the next board meeting, I will submit a resolution which I hope will receive one sponsor and one co-sponsor. The resolution will be roughly this: be it resolved, beginning January 1, 2021, and ending December 31, 2021, the sheriff's salary will be reduced by 25%. Be it further resolved that at the end of each month, the sheriff will be required in writing to justify his expenditures. And in the event that he refuses to do so, he will find his salary reduced by 5% the following month until he complies with the board's request. In my opinion, if the sheriff cannot and will not obey his oath of office, I suggest he resign and run for governor on a full-time basis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else out there that would like privilege of the floor?
Yes, Chairman, myself.
Come forward, Sheriff.
Is this good right here for you?
That's fine.
Okay.
Could you just state your name for the...
Sure, Sheriff Carpinelli, Lewis County, New York. Thanks, Ms. Molly. What I'm about to read to you is coming from our representatives from the Sheriff's Association and our council. Many of you are aware the governor recently issued his 203rd executive order, this time directing all counties to reform their police agency, the sheriff's office, or lose all state funding for all county programs. The governor's order implies that all agencies and state funding for all county programs. The governor's order implies that all police agencies and all police officers are racist and abusive to the public. Speaking for Lewis County Sheriffs, I can equivalently state that the governor is wrong in that suggestion. And the governor is wrong to threaten our county with financial ruin to get us to make the improvements in police operations, which is something we work on every day without his misinformed bullying. I'd like to point out a few things about the governor's order that you should consider. We have a constitutional form of government where laws are passed by the legislature and carried out by the executive. We do not have a one-man dictatorship. Under our Constitution, state funds are allocated to the counties by the legislature, not by the governor. The governor had no authority to issue this executive order threatening our county with loss of state aid. He had a legislative present in Albany, and at his backing called the same week he issued this order, and he thought it was necessary to threaten the counties. He could have asked the legislature to consider it, where perhaps there could have been some public input, discussion, and due deliberation. It is wrong the way the governor continues to implement sweeping, impactful changes in law enforcement policy without any opportunity to input from the law enforcement professionals who have to carry out these changes, or from the members of the public who have to suffer the results of those ill-considered changes, or from the members of the public, the changes. His unilateral action in issuing this executive order and refusal to slow down the stampede of ill-considered legislation passed the same week is discouraging for police professionals and detrimental to public safety. Executive Order 203 is titled a Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, but the governor is anything but a collaborator. Instead of calling together leaders of the police community in New York, maybe even for once being in the same room with us to discuss ideas and maybe learn what's actually going on in policing in New York, he issues an ill-informed edict from on high and expects everyone to conform to his misguided wishes. Unfortunately, there's an opportunity lost for the people of New York because the sheriffs and other police leaders in the state could have been collaborative partners with the governor and legislator in thoughtful, measured, well-founded improvements in policing. We are now being forced to react, and we should have been invited to participate. Without doing this to Floyd is indefensible. The people across the nation have right to feel angry and entitled to question the leaders about the state of police in America. But it's the job of responsible leaders to respond to the people's understandable emotions with facts and reason. The currently oft-repeated notion that the police are systematically racist simply is not supported by the facts, or responsible leaders should say so. It is true that there are some, but very few police officers who do not deserve to wear the uniform. But that acknowledged fact does not justify painting all police with a broad brush, ignoring the sacrifice the overwhelming percentage of good police officers give to the public every day. We have 95,000 police officers serving in New York. In any group of 95,000, there are bound to be some bad apples, but I wager there are far fewer bad people among the New York police officers than among any other group that size. We should do a better job identifying the bad ones and getting them out of the profession before they have the opportunity to do harm. We need changes in law and order to do that, which is something that the sheriffs have strongly supported for years. Support the governor's claim of systematic racism in policing, which he is ordering the counties to correct. The governor names 8 minority men killed by police over the past 25 years. What he fails to point out is that all 8 police shootings took place in New York City. What that might indicate is racism probably addressed in New York City, but it indicates nothing about our county. And even as to New York City, it does not indicate much, because what the governor fails to acknowledge is that of those 8 cases over 25 years, 3 resulted in refusal by the grand jury to indict, 3 resulted in acquittal by a jury, only 2 resulted in conviction of the officers. Every death at the hands of law enforcement is regrettable. But 2 guilty cops over a 25-year death at the hands of law enforcement period, during which there were multi-millions of contacts between police and black citizens, hardly equates to systematic racism in policing. If racism in New York policing is evident, pervasive, and long-standing as the governor says, then we will have to ask him, where were you for the first 9 years as governor, or during your 4 years as Attorney General? We didn't hear a peep out of you about this supposed terrible state of affairs in New York policing until the current bandwagon came along and you jumped on. The very premise of Executive Order 203 is that local policing in this state is systematically racist. The notion has been debunked by serious scholars and by the facts. We expect community activists and anarchists who take advantage of them to stir up the following by appealing to emotions. We expect our government leaders to stand up to the angry crowds and recite the facts. The governor is always pontificating about following the facts and the science. How about following that rule now? The facts are on the side of law enforcement in New York. The governor obviously is not. Our sheriff's office will go through the process mandated by the governor in order to not jeopardize the county's finances. But the governor does not need to order us to examine operations and make improvements. That is what sheriffs do routinely as professional managers. Collaborating with community groups and leaders to improve the performance of my office will not be a novel experience. I do that every day. Our sheriff's office has long ago implemented diversity all the policies and practices contemplated by the governor's order. If the governor had any kind of relationship with the police agency in the state of New York, he would have been aware of that. A glaring omission in the governor's claim of racism in policing in his order to the counties to correct it is his failure to mention of any of his own state-level police organizations. We are supposed to believe that they are all perfect because he is in charge of them. It does not include them in his order because to imply that they are racist, like he implies our local police agencies are all racist, would mean that he, as the leader of the past 9.5 years, must condone their racism. The fact that are many fine officers in the state police, the SUNY police, NCOM police, force rangers, etc. I am not accusing them of anything. My deputies work side by side with them every day. What I am doing is accusing the governor of hypocrisy for pointing a finger at us and exempting himself from the same scrutiny because he thinks he is above the scrutiny and must be obeyed. In issuing his dictate, the governor cites his duties under the Constitution. Perhaps he should have read a little further along the Constitution. We're to discover that sheriffs, too, are constitutional officers. We do not answer to the governor. We answer to the people. On behalf of the people, we have been working at improving police in New York for a long time. The governor is arriving late at the table. I will continue to work to improve policing with all my citizens without respect to race. I will do it so despite not because of the governor's attempt to bully our county. I hope that someday in the near future the governor will take the time to find out about all good things that are actually going on in the sheriff's office and other local police agencies around the state. And perhaps we can work together on these important goals in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there anyone else that would like privilege of the floor? If not, we'll move on to presentations of petitions, communications, and notices.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The following resolutions were received from the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board. A resolution requesting review and change of APA policy on agency review of proposals for new telecommunications towers and other tall structures in the Adirondack Park, and a resolution recommending actions to strengthen the clean, drained, and dry aquatic invasive species spread prevention law. That's it.
Thank you. Reports of county officers and departments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislators have received copies of the Treasurer's June report, the June Highway and Solid Waste Department's audit reports, minutes of the June Youth Bureau Advisory Board meeting, and the second quarter bed tax report. That's the end of the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Reports of standing committees. Tom, would you like to start off with finance and rules, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All I've got is a motion. Motion to authorize the treasurer, Eric Berker, to refill one senior account clerk position due to a vacancy effective immediately.
Moved by Tom, second by Dick. Discussion. Jerry? Any discussion? You good? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Tom? If not, we'll move on to Jerry in General Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three motions tonight. A motion to authorize Building and Grounds Supervisor Matt O'Connor to put an RFP for 911 tower road repair for 6 towers. And I'll make that a motion.
Moved by Jerry, second by Tom. Discussion.
Is there a dollar value on that, Jerry?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there a dollar value on that?
No, what we'll do is bid them out, see what they are, and then using the money we get in from the state for the E911 software where we can spend it, we'll spend it at the county.
Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
A motion to authorize Highway Superintendent Warren Shaw to refill one full-time MEO position due to resignation, effective immediately.
Moved by Jerry, second by Andrea. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and a motion to authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to refill one part-time dispatcher position due to resignation, effective immediately.
Moved by Jerry, second by Dick. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And E.F. Johnson, we have pulled the number 175, and we've given you a corrected one that Cassandra just passed out. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions for Jerry? Thank you, Jerry. We'll move on to Randy with Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to report at this time.
Very good. Questions for Randy, anyone? Now we'll move on to Dick, as the board's rep on the hospital board of managers.
Yep, I've got a few things, but I can't read without taking that mask down, so. Okay. Employee of the month for May was Jacqueline Gamache. She's a respiratory therapist at Wisconsin General Hospital. This Deborah Wers is our new nursing home administrator. She was introduced to the board at our last meeting. She brings a fresh perspective to the nursing home and has been a great addition to the team. And on top of that, I've had 4 or 5 calls from employees up there that congratulated the board on the selection of her and putting her in that job. And they're very happy with the stuff that she's doing there. I think we're on a good track there. We had a gain of $4 million to $37,428. But before you think hallelujah, there's a little more to that. We had a stimulus payments, 3 of them, that totaled $5.2 million that came to the hospital. So that will help us with some of the COVID and what have you, and probably will defray quite a few of our expenses. So it's all good news. But it's spent on some of our COVID losses. It's not extra money, but it'll keep us from having to find other money to replace it. So that was good news. On our physician and recruitment, Mr. Kerr updated the board that there's 6 providers, 4 physicians and 2 nurse practitioners we're working with and signing new contracts for employment. It should be noted that this takes a little while because they have to get certified so they can bill insurance and what have you. So these people may be phased in as that stuff happens. The community COVID-19 testing agreement, some of you saw it in the paper. Jerry updated the group regarding the clinics, and he's going to talk a little more on that as we go on. But you may have seen in the paper, we're going to be at Harrisville, Lowell's the hub. We're going to be in the south someplace as well. And Jerry and Brian had a brief on Lincoln Lewis, I think it was, that talked about that. And at the end of it, they had one small statement. As I understand it, I don't have Facebook, but there was a lot of chatter over this issue of they just suggested that everybody should wear masks when they can. I, having been a service member, was taught to lead by example when I was in the service. So I would like to lead by example and invite the rest of the legislators in this room to go on record that we support Jerry and Ryan in their effort to encourage people to wear masks when they can. We listen to the physicians and the scientists that are on this. I think we can see with our own eyes they have saved some lives. So what I put it to you is, if it's too inconvenient to wear a mask and you lose a relative or a loved one, is it still too inconvenient to wear a mask? I think the answer is no. Anybody else support that?
Would you like to make that a motion?
I'd like to make that a motion.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And
Motion carried.
one last thing on that, and I will change the topic. I happened to be at Ace True Value last Saturday morning, and I had to buy some masks. I bought 50 of them in a box. Looked around behind me, there was a young man there in his 20s, no mask on or anything. So I simply just took one out of the box, and I said, young man, If you want to wear this, I'm wearing a mask to protect you. If you wear this, it'll protect me. He said, thank you very much, sir, and put it on. So if you're not confrontational, but suggestive, I think it helps with that. Enough of that. Now, oh yeah, okay. Under the clinics, Dr. Harney is going to be involved with that, along with Dr. Lewinberg, family practitioner at South Willis, has agreed to be a teaching physician. And that goes to, we're going to be partnering with Paxton St. Luke's Family Residency. And what this does, it brings some doctors who are in the residency from that organization into Lewis County, gives them a chance to see what the county's like, what the individuals are like, what the hospital's like. Gives us a chance to show them maybe this is better than being in a big city to live and stuff. So that's a positive. And I think with that, that's it. Thank you very much.
Our hospital CEO, Jerry Cares, with us. Would you have any comments?
Yeah, a couple things.
Sure, thank you. Let me perhaps put a little more detail and follow up Dick's lead on the community COVID-19 testing program. So we've been working directly with the executive branch on this. The state will be providing us with 300 test kits a week. The contractual relationship with the reference lab, their name is BioReference, and the appropriate and adequate supply of PPEs for the staff who will be doing the actual test. We're going to run 3 clinics a week. Our first clinic will be a week from Thursday on the Lowville campus near the emergency department where we ran the drive-in lab program early in the pandemic. And we chose Thursday because any operational bugs that present, that'll give us Friday to resolve as we prepare for 3 clinics the following week, and then through the remainder of the summer. We're thinking right now is we would go clinics in Lowville on Monday and Thursday, and then our outlying communities on Wednesday. And we chose the communities of Harrisville, Beaver Falls, and Lyons Falls. 1, because we have clinics there. 2, we can easily set up a canopy, and our parking lots allow that drive-in COVID testing that you probably have seen on the news. We will staff 1 position. Public health will staff the 2nd position, and together we will work operating the clinic. We were fortunate, pursued and received some rural health designation money to actually fund this person we will be staffing at the clinic. So the person is funded, the supplies are funded, and the reference lab, postage and shipping are funded. So it really is a nice opportunity for us. The question will be, will we have an adequate number of residents and employees who work throughout the county wanting to be tested? A lot of debate internally on that. I think what will probably happen, those first few clinics will probably have a bolus of people who will come. But I think the appeal may wear off as we go into the summer. There are no restrictions on being tested. Yes, simply drive up. We get some demographic data so that you can be notified of your test results. If you're negative, the health system will take responsibility for notifying you. If you're positive, public health will contact you because now they're going to have to initiate contact tracing. The other thing we want to work into this is working with our largest employers. It makes no sense to have a large employer send everybody to the hospital or to one of our clinics. So as we work out the bugs, we will schedule sort of large employer clinics where we go right to their parking lot and make this available to them. There is no cost, no fee for our residents and employees to be tested. At this point, our math is showing it would cost us more to bill the insurance companies for the little reimbursement that we would receive. And really, I think the functional purpose for doing this is to create surveillance opportunities and for all of us as leaders in this county to know what is our exposure of COVID in Lewis County. So then we can act accordingly. So I think this is an exciting development. You know, I think, and I appreciate, you know, the sheriff spoke before me. My experience with state government's a little bit different in the health and human services arena than he may be experiencing in the law enforcement. I actually think we've been doing that pretty well, and I think I would actually, and I've said this publicly, we actually need more of a coordinated effort nationally than we're getting. But I think in New York State, health systems are working together, counties are working together, health systems and public health are working together. And I think you put all of that together, and I think that explains why the growth of the virus in the rest of the country is not being replicated in New York State. So I think we're heading in the right direction. Any questions about that program? Phil?
First off, I applaud it because I think it's overdue to get out in the hinterlands and do more testing versus retesting in the nursing home. And I have no problem with that, but, you know, the outside people need to be tested as well.
Yeah.
So is this a first come, first served thing? I mean, drive up, if you're number one in line, then you get done first and then go take them as they come?
Correct. What scheduling does is forces us to bring more manpower. So the check-in process becomes complicated if you pre-register, if you will. So it really will be, you drive in, and if you're first in line or 10th in line, you'll work your way through. The longest part of the process is filling out the form, right? So we can get the information to contact you. The actual swabbing is pretty quick. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's really a matter of seconds. So that's part of what we're going to have to figure out is what our throughput can be in operating these things. That's why that first clinic in Lowville will be important to us, so we can sort of have a sense of, you know, is 3 hours the right amount of time for the clinic, or in some places will we have to expand it, or maybe the first 3 weeks it should be 4 hours, and then after that it's 2 hours. So there'll be a little bit of adjusting on the fly.
Actually, that was question number 2, how long would you be doing it? So if you're doing 300 a week and 3 clinics, so you're going to have the capability of doing 100 in Harrisville, for instance, I assume.
We will go till we run out. We also have some inventory, so I mean, if we certainly we're not gonna position ourselves to run out of equipment or test kits.
You don't intend to turn people away because
No.
of that? Okay.
That is not the plan. You know, it's truly wide open. The other question we've had is what happens if someone from another county comes, you know, so you're right next door to St. Lawrence,
Right.
and, you know, Beaver River, you know, Copenhagen's just a stone's throw away. Anybody who comes to our clinic will be tested regardless of which county they live in. The materials and the funding is coming from outside of our county, and I know when we needed people tested at other state-sponsored clinics, we encourage them to go to Utica or to Syracuse. So, you know, we're going to extend the same courtesy to our fellow counties.
I appreciate that because, as you say, we are right next to St. Lawrence County,
Right.
as well as Jefferson and the Natural Bridge. So you're going to get some of those people. I just would offer, if we do have a pretty substantial employer, Viking Surveys, with 100+ people, if you need assistance setting something up with them, I'd be happy to help or
So
give
we'd
you
be
the
very
contact
open.
info, you know. So, like you say, it would be a whole lot easier to go down there versus sending 100 people up to the clinic.
And that's, I think, because of our flexibility, we can adapt to those kinds of things. We won't be perhaps as rigid as, 800-bed hospital would be just by their bureaucracy. I think we'll be able to adapt to meet the needs of the community. So the goal right now is next Thursday. But, there are a little bit of pins and needles here. We still haven't received our test kits, and we still haven't received our PPE, but I think we have enough internal stock to get us started, and we'll be able to make it work. Are there any other questions on the clinic?
Jerry, is this?
My question was kind of answered. Seasonal residents. Somebody that lives in Branningham that's from Syracuse.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and actually, that probably, from a public health point of view, makes good sense, because we have folks from out of state, from some of those
Right.
hot states, and from communities that have struggled more than we have. It'd be nice to know, right? The one question I haven't been able to answer is how long will it take to get the test results? So we don't know that yet, but we should have an answer on that in hopefully a handful of days before the first clinic.
Thank you.
Is this an antibody test or just the COVID virus test?
No, just a COVID virus test. There's enough evidence right now that the antibody test has sort of fallen out of favor because they don't know how long, right, the antibodies are with you. And this test, like all COVID-19 tests, is a test in a moment in time. So you can test negative today, but if in 3 days you go down to the local bar with a lot of 20 and 30 somethings, you may test positive the next couple of days. So it's a moment in time, and it allows us to evaluate what's happening in our county.
In general, on the test results, are you talking hours or days or weeks?
We're talking probably a couple of days. I would say 2 to 4 in that range.
I won't hold you to that.
Jerry, there was a thing on the NICEC ad I read today, they said about a week, but I don't know if they know any more than...
Well, it all depends on the reference lab.
Yeah.
So we've experienced turnaround times in as little as a day and a half, and we've been as long as 7 during the period of the pandemic. So a lot of it depends on how much volume arrives at the reference lab. If we had a holiday thrown in, if it's spread out more, they tend to be pretty responsive. We have still waiting for reagents for the analyzer that we purchased that I reported to you a month and a half or so ago. That has been our biggest drawback at this point. There is just a shortage on reagents throughout the country. And being a smaller community, we're a little bit on the low end of the pecking order on that. But the conversation I had with our lab director, he thought the third week or fourth week in the month of July was realistic. So we're cautiously hopeful that will happen. Right now, we can turn around a test in a short period of time with another process we have. We're saving those for surgeries, because we need a quick turnaround time before someone goes in the OR, so we're saving those for those. Okay, if there are no more questions there, let me just give you an update on Copenhagen. As you know, we've been in the Certificate of Need process for Copenhagen. At the end of last week, we received communication from the DOH, the CON division, and they had some additional questions on the fire rating of our walls. It's a little bit outside my purview, but we're putting together a response on that. The questions, it's a typical process. We had 4 or 5 questions. We're answering the questions. Nothing that appeared to me to be a game changer. Remember, the people in Copenhagen have been without a clinic now for over a year. And once we get the CON response, we're going to go out to bid. We've already budgeted the money, and so we remain hopeful, and we've identified a family nurse practitioner who will be staffing it full time. So we are like this close to getting it going, so we just got to stay the course. And and I appreciate that Dick made reference to the residency partnership with Faxton St. Luke's. One of the challenges rural medicine faces is this constant drive to recruit physicians. And the best recruit is that physician who will spend the next 2 decades here. And we've had some success in that arena. That's why this affiliation with Faxton St. Luke's and housing these students and having them in our community during their residency, those are the folks who will, upwards of 50% will choose rural medicine as their path forward. So we get them young, and then if we recruit middle-aged and middle-experienced individuals, and then with a few senior physicians, then we will not find ourselves in a position of really struggling and staffing the hospital or having to rely inappropriately on locum tenens to staff the hospital. So this is a huge deal, and I just want to commend Dr. Harney and Dr. Leuenberger, who really have been working for about 1.5 years, and many visits back and forth between leadership in Utica and leadership here. So this is significant, and my hope, our first student will be here in about 18 months. They'll go through their program, and then within the next 4 to 5 years, we'll see the fruits of this effort. That feels like a long ways away, but we can't solve tomorrow unless we plant the right seeds and nurture and develop relationships, and this is an example of that. So I just wanted to highlight that for you today.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, moving on to county manager report, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I think the biggest thing happening, Jerry touched on our testing. That's great news. Great work by Ashley and the team at Public Health working with the hospital as well. The second big thing that's happening is we are keeping an eye on the state budget. So, the budget director had a deadline of June 30th to announce a second round of cuts. There wasn't really a big announcement, but some folks across the state saw their checks fall a little bit short. Cities were cut 15 to 20%. Towns were not cut, but remember, towns now get their aid and incentive for municipalities from us. It comes out of our sales tax. So, we don't have a city in Lewis County, so we weren't affected, but essentially the towns were kept whole because the state's been taking it out of our portion of sales tax for the last 2 years anyway. We did get a note that our CHIPS funding could be cut up to 20%. I think it's fair to expect that it will be cut 20%. So we're trying to budget and do our projects accordingly. And then we did receive 20% cuts across the board from our Oasis mental health institutions, which you all should have received notification by email about that. So no big announcement, but we have seen the effects of the state's budget issues coming here to Lewis County as well. The other issue that we're keeping an eye on is the federal stimulus. So we have to date received very, very little money from the federal government. We've received a little bit for transportation, a little bit for Office for the Aging, but beyond that, we have not seen any substantial contribution from the federal government. I have been talking with our federal partners, our federal elected officials and staffs from their North Country representatives, and they're saying that we should expect a fourth federal stimulus bill by the end of July. And that's good, but the timing is not great because we are supposed to start budgeting by the end of July. So we're going to go into budget season with 3 big questions. That is state cuts, how much are they and where are they going to hit? Federal funds, are we going to receive any to make up for loss in sales tax and some of the other disruptions to our operations that we've dealt with through COVID? And then the third question mark is our sales tax. Luckily, and I think Eric will provide more information, but Luckily, to date, we're only $60,000 off from our 2019 total, which is remarkable considering everything. But we don't know where the rest of this year is headed, and we could easily see ourselves having another shutdown, perhaps in the fall. So it's tough to say where our sales tax will be. So as we move into budgeting, which would typically start at the end of this month, a lot of counties are saying, hey, we're not going to start budgeting until into August because there's too many big unknowns. It's very hard to do a budget without knowing answers to those questions. We'll do our best, and hopefully by the time it gets in front of the board to approve in December, we'll have our very best effort to try to predict what 2021 is going to look like. Last thing I want to mention is that I've asked our staff members, department heads, to nominate employees that went above and beyond during the COVID-19 pandemic response, and asked them to write a brief description of what the employee did, and we'll have those employees invite them to come to the next board meeting in August and recognize them by the Board of Legislators. So I think that'll be nice. Other than that, any questions?
Yeah. The stimulus money you referred to initially from the feds, that's already been approved, is that coming through the state to us? Is that the holdup, I guess is my question.
No, we received the funding for transportation was direct to us. I don't know even if it went through the state of New York, we've already received it cash in hand. And then we've already received the funding for Office for the Aging as well.
But you said there was funds that we haven't gotten yet.
Yes, and the FMAP funds, which we've been talking about all the way back before COVID, because the state was trying to mess around with our federal Medicaid administration funds, those have been released by the state. So we won't get a check for those funds, but we will see our weekly share is usually around $99,000, $100,000. We should see that down in the 50s or 60s or 70s as we tap into that share. So it's not going to be a check to us. It's just going to be money that doesn't go out the door. So that's a good thing. I mean, that is a good way for the federal government to help get aid to counties, especially during a public health crisis, is through Medicaid. Because we would expect, enrollment in Medicaid expenditures, of course, to be up. So that does make sense as long as the state releases it to us, which luckily they have begun to. I've got Jenny's hand up, so go ahead, Jenny.
I just wanted to clear that up a little bit. Our weekly shares were $93,027 a week, and they dropped to $87,000 per week. So it's not as big a drop as Ryan indicated, but it should save us about $240,000 over the course of 40 weeks.
So savings that matter, that's good. Any other questions?
So do you attribute the sales tax to the toilet paper effect?
I leave all toilet paper prognostication to our county treasurer. I don't know, I will say one thing on our sales tax, this is the first year that we've collected internet sales tax, and thank God, because if we didn't have the internet sales tax, during this, especially during this time, we would have been really, in trouble. So the timing actually worked out quite well that the state, allowed us to start collecting that portion of our sales tax.
Thank you, Ryan. County Treasurer here.
Thank you, and I've just a few highlights. I provided you a written report and tried to change the format some to give you some just key financial information from our financial systems, and I'll do a little work next month to provide information on toilet paper sales if I can track something down. Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, sales tax collections really very surprising that we are hanging in there and not too far behind where we were a year ago. I can get a detailed line by line, almost business by business report from New York State. I will attempt to get that probably in about a month, as they will have full data for the first 6 months, so I'm going to wait a few weeks and then I'll request that report. That'll help to give us a little bit more information on where the sales tax is coming from, because it definitely is surprising that we are at the level that we are, I think, at this point in the year. Ryan did also mention the COVID-19 revenues, so I won't give you any more information on that. I would say thanks to Jenny Jones for compiling a lot of information. She reached out to departments and other agencies in Lewis County. On the right-hand side of the page is just a summary of some of our cash balances, and you can see I would point out the general fund and also our health insurance fund. The cash balances have grown from a year ago, so that is a good sign. And then just a quick summary on mid-year expenses, and really just some highlights in some key departments I wanted to reflect. To give you every department would take up the full page, and I don't think you need to see that much information, but just some key information there. And I think I have one note at the bottom of the page that with expenses primarily, not so much payroll, but with expenses primarily, there's always fluctuations in when a bill might be paid or when an invoice is received. So if we show something under budget at this point in the year, there are times it could be just related to the timing of an invoice being received. So just take that information not as final data for 6 months. I'll do my best to answer any questions if you have any.
On the sales tax collection, could you go back to the previous format versus this, where you just give us through June 30th, between the 2 years? I like to see the 2 years, each individual month. I'd like to continue that process.
Absolutely can, and if I don't put it in this report, Legislator Coulter, I can put it in a separate report for you. We track that, and it's...
I like to track it month to month.
Yep, can do.
I think if anyone else has any thoughts on format or numbers that they would like to see, Eric would probably do his best to accommodate anyone, so if you have any specific requests.
I will comment one more thing, Eric, but I do appreciate that mid-year expenses and showing that more information. It's very helpful, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Dick?
Yeah, Larry, on the health insurance, we've got good healthy fund balance there right now. If we could maybe have some discussions between now and our committee meeting, and then at our committee meeting, think about that. I think there's some incentives for even improving the health of our employees and stuff that we might be able to help.
I believe it was on the agenda for the upcoming committee meetings to discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Eric?
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Report of the Financial Rules Committee for Rule 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Rules Committee reports that they have examined the claims presented for payment in the total amount of $618,566.78 and recommend that they be audited and allowed for the amounts claimed.
Need a motion? Great. Second by Ron. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. So there seems to be support to continue passing resolutions as a slate, with the exceptions for ones that people have questions on. So at this time, are there any resolutions that people would like to pull for outside discussion? And we will pass the rest of them as a slate. We have already pulled 163, I'm going backwards here, 155 and 163. Are there others that anyone would like to?
We pulled 175 too and inserted 183.
Do you want that one?
175 is withdrawn, completely
Okay.
withdrawn, and then we have a late resolution.
183.
You want to pass that separately?
If people got questions on that, everybody understand it and satisfied with it?
Which one?
183, C.F. Johnson, going into phase 2.
You can either pull it separately.
Let's hold that one out,
Okay.
and then we'll do that one.
Where, can we hold out 160?
150,
160? 160?
160.
you want to withdraw that, or
No, just
deal with it separately?
Just deal with it separately. Shouldn't take long.
No.
Okay, so I have 155, 160, 163, 175 is withdrawn, and 183 we'll do separate as well.
Everyone good with that? Yep. Okay. You're ready. We have to do the first one is separate because it's a roll call, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, and 164.
What about 153?
Yes, the very first one we'll have to do separately because there is a roll call vote with it. So do you want me to proceed with the roll call vote and then we do the slate and then we'll go back to the ones that we pulled out specifically?
Yep.
Okay. So resolution 153 is auditing and allowing claims in the amount of $618,566.78.
Moved by Randy, second by Jerry. Discussion. And this is a roll call.
Hathaway,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Chartrand,
Yes.
Hulzer,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
LaScholz,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Morahan,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Dolhoff.
Yes.
So if you want to, just ask for a motion for the slate of resolutions.
Okay, I need a motion to pass a slate of resolutions. Ron, second by Greg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Motion carries.
Okay, so then the next one would be resolution number 155, resolution after hearing under local law number 10-2019, junkyard law.
Moved by,
I need to abstain from this.
moved by Jerry, second by, she's going to abstain.
No.
Tom? Any discussion? Is this a roll call or not?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No Andrea abstaining, no opposed.
Okay, the next one is resolution number 160, resolution authorizing modification to agreement with Lewis County Chamber of Commerce for tourism services.
Moved by Greg, second by Dick. Any discussion?
Yeah, I asked for this to be held. I had some concerns about this one when we talked about it in committee, and I just think that the people in the audience sometimes don't understand what's in the whole thing because they don't read what we're reading. My thought was that with COVID, that this office was pretty well shut down, wasn't doing too much of anything. Ryan today corrected me on that and went through quite a list of things that this office did through COVID. So that's an impact on why this is needed, and I just wanted that to be understood. But separate from this, and not putting it in this, I would like to see from the first of the year till about now too, as far as after that, they're going to give us monthly information. So I don't want to add it to this. I think they will do it if we just ask them to do that.
So you'd like to see a summary of the
January till, yeah. Till,
activities that they've been doing for years to date.
yeah. I don't understand a lot of what they do. I think it would be important to know.
Right in here, in addition, the request is for the chamber to submit bi-monthly detailed report.
Yeah,
on
going
the
forward,
activities.
but I wanted to do it.
You want it from the beginning?
Yeah, January through is all I'm thinking of. And then we can see how the impacts before, during, and after COVID. That's all.
Well, this, we should understand that this resolution is, supports paying them their contracted amount, but for the year, but in advance.
In
instead.
advance, right, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
There's no dollar change at all.
Right.
It's just the timing of when they receive the payments. is gonna change. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution number 163, resolution authorizing a modification and extension agreement between Office for the Aging and Open Sky Wellness LLC.
Moved by Randy, second by Andrea. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And show me abstaining, motion carries.
The next one is resolution number 164, resolution appointing planning director and amending Lewis County compensation plan.
Moved by Phil, second by Dick. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Stand up and be counted back
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you're doing for us.
And the last one is the late resolution number 183, resolution authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and E.F. Johnson for the implementation of Phase 2 of the E911 radio emergency communications system.
Moved by Ron, second by Jerry. Discussion.
Dick, you have some questions?
No.
Okay. Anybody got any questions?
I'm glad you know about all that.
Nobody got any questions?
You answered them earlier, Jerry. You answered mine earlier.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Other business.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I would like to have an attorney-client privilege session to discuss with the board some legal matters on a particular contract that has to be finally negotiated.
I need a motion to go into executive session by Ron, second by Tom. Any discussion? I will comment that when we come back out of the executive
We might have,
session,
we might have
we might have something. Okay, sorry about that. Maybe you want to go home. Okay,
Or we'll tell you.
all in favor of executive session?
Aye.
Take a 5-minute recess and we'll be in executive session.
Can we call us, or?